just to introduce, like I keep saying, we're going to do something a little bit different this morning. And obviously, we've been teaching through I've been teaching through this foundation series for quite a while now. I think we were approaching like week 37 of our kind of foundational understanding things. But we're at this point in time, we're getting ready to transition into a number of weeks where we're going to be talking about the church and like what it means to really be part of Christ's church and our place in here together, how we, what that looks like as an individual, how that looks like as we serve each other, what that looks like as the church reaches out, all of those things. But this morning, kind of help us, I hope, understand a little bit more of, there's a difference between just like attending church and actually being part of Jesus's church. Like coming to a church building and just, gathering together is a lot different than actually being part of Christ's family and church. And so this morning, I thought it would be beneficial, and this is going to be a new thing. We're going to we're trying out this one time, but I've actually asked, because I've walked with them through the process a little bit, I've asked Noe to join me this morning in kind of an opportunity for testimony. But I'm going to try to interview that testimony out of him. And I'm not the greatest interviewer, and is not as good as charismatic as Noe is. He's not as comfortable in front of people as he'd probably want to be. So between the both of us, we're going to wrestle our way through this a little bit. And I hope that you can see through what we talk through in this part. And I'm going to close it. When we get to the end, I'm going to open up the Bible and just look at a few things Jesus said to just cap it all off. But we're going to, like I said, kind of work through this talk, and I hope that you guys can see maybe what some of those differences are. So if anybody needs their coffee or a drink, get it right now. I'm going to grab some chairs, and I'm going to invite Noe up right now as we start. And I'm going to grab us 2 chairs. And I'm going to grab 2 water bottles. I'm going to need one. Okay. So I said a little bit different this morning. Thank you. Now I'm going to have you put your mic on for recording purposes. Actually, there's a magnet. You can put it down your collar. And then your beard. And yeah, I'll just slide it down a little bit. Oops, I think I let go of the magnet. Where's it at? We can find it. There you go. All right. So we talked over this a little bit the other day because I've had the opportunity with Noe for a couple of years now to walk with them through some things. And I felt like this was a good opportunity to have a real life story that attaches to what it looks like to come to understand some of these things. So, you good, Noe?
Yeah.
All right. Let me get my questions open that I was going to ask you. Okay. So just, bear with us a little bit. I'm going to encourage Noe, because sometimes if you know me, you've been here a little while, sometimes I can ramble a little bit. So if I ramble into a question, Noe might have to be like, what did you mean? So,
I'm sure I'll do that. I'll do that.
We'll do that. So, Noe, before you started coming around here, before I met you a number of years ago, how would you describe your relationship with God and the church? Like, what was your view on God and the church, years back?
Well, not much. I was always been brought up with the church for a few years, and then having family that always gone to it, so I've always heard it. But I was never really attentive. I never went to church really as much as I thought I should. So I didn't really, I would go to church, but not go to church.
Okay. And so, at that point in time, knowing what you know now, would you say you had a relationship with Jesus at that point?
No. I would, I would pretty much fake it. I would pretty much fake having a relationship when I first started. You're getting more sorry. It was very tough the beginning to transition into going to church. From when I first started, when I first started here, I was at my lowest point in my life, pretty much homeless with my family. And we would live in a small little room in Desert Hot Springs. And so at that time, I was battling a lot of stuff, trying to keep my family together, keep the marriage together. And I was just at the bottom. And so I had to do something to change that. And that night, when I decided to make a decision to try to go to church, I prayed, and lo and behold, my sister Sylvia called me and asked me that, hey, we have an apartment for rent. And I was just ecstatic. I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus, And we jumped on the first trip we came over, looked at the apartment, which I didn't care how it looked. It was just, I could say I had an apartment, for my family. So that's where I came with my sister Sylvia, here to church, and started my journey into learning the Lord.
And which is cool because obviously, God used your sister to help with finding a place to live, but also inviting you into God's house. That's cool to look back and seeing. So, when you got that invitation to come to church and you were going to take that step, what were you looking for when you first started coming? What were you looking for when you started coming to church?
Honestly, I wasn't really looking for anything. I was just thankful that I was able to get an apartment. And when I started attending here, I kind of just got comfortable in just coming here and just being complacent and just saying I was just coming to church, And that's pretty much how I did it for a little while. So I wasn't really looking nothing at the time because I figured, I'm in church. It's what God wants. So I came to church.
Yeah. So at that point, you were bad off. God opened some doors. You came to church. You were coming for a while, but even in that while, would you say even at that point that you had a relationship with Jesus?
No. I wasn't. I didn't have a relationship at the time. I was basically, it was shameful to say this, but I was trying to please other people to say that I was going to church due to my past. Being at the time, I had a habit of being a compulsive liar, just lying and people needed help, and I always volunteer, and I wouldn't do it, and it was just, I just didn't want, I want them to see that I was coming to church, basically, but I wasn't really into the church as far as me being saved, so I came to church so that people can see, no, he's going to church, to try to change their minds, as how they saw me.
Yeah. So you just kind of felt like you were just going through the motions at that point, just kind of for the sake of other people.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I remember, my memory's terrible, but you're memorable, so I remember you coming around. And, I got to know you and such. We had some talks and stuff, but we started learning the Word together. We started going through some things. And you stated some already, but, as you started to learn God's Word, did you start to see more of kind of the problems in yourself?
Oh yeah, I've always, as I was getting closer to him and actually starting to take the time to learn, to really know who He is and follow the Word. And I saw a lot of problems within myself, and it was just how can I say it? It was just, I don't know. Can you just break it down a little bit on that part, that question?
Yeah, I mean, because like we've talked about this, it's just like, and I could give some insight on it too. It's just like, we come and we learn these things, and like we see like God tells us to live this way, and this is the right thing to do by Him, and then I see like I'm not doing that. I'm not, like you said, like you had a reputation of being a liar, and you look back at that and you see that in you now. I know you're telling me that one story about like you had a friend and
Oh yeah, I was at his house, and it was a long time frame in Coachella, and this happened about 2 years ago, close to 2 years ago, if that. So maybe but then at that time frame, and I don't know what happened. He was looking for his phone, and I called him. I'll help you find your phone. So I called him, and I seen it, and it says "menteritas," So that right there got me so good, because it means liar, And I knew right there. I was like, oh no, I can't live this way. I have to change my image on who I was. And at that point, I made a sworn statement to the Lord that I'm gonna do everything I can to change the way I do things.
Yeah. I mean, you're not alone on that, brother. Like, we all have to, like every one of us, I don't care what your problem is, but every one of us can look back and be like, there are definitely things like I'm not living right by the Lord. And until we come to understand that, like we don't understand any more than that. We're stuck in our ways. And you were stuck, that was what was natural for you at that point. But then God started showing you something different,
Right.
And that's what's so valuable for each of us is when God starts turning the lights on and helping us see something different. So, as you sit here today, because you started seeing that difference, you saw it in yourself, you started seeing what God says. As you sit here today, like what does it mean that Jesus died for you?
What does it mean to me? It means everything. It means that I'm saved, that, it means that I can live my life, through Christ and be able to serve and help people. And, now I'm out there differently and planting the seed on just everybody that I see out there that is homeless, and I pray for them. I stop. I do a lot of things that I wouldn't have done at all. I've always had a big heart in helping those that need help a little bit, but not like I'm doing it now. It's a whole different way of living for me, and me being in a club, and I'm trying to incorporate the Lord's word in our club, and to me it's huge. I'm just praying for everybody. Like I can't pray enough, and I'm out there and I pray, or people would call me and talk to me, and stuff like that, and I don't lash back at them like I would before. I just pray for those that would do that,
Mm-hmm.
So to me, by Him dying on the cross for me, I mean, I know that that's sacrifice to the fullest, and I got to do something for Him. And for me to do that, I'm going to have to help people, and that's just how I'm saying things now.
Yeah. So like I said, so you understood the problems in you. You understood that sacrifice that Jesus made for you. But even when you came to understand that, was there things like holding you back from like surrendering to the Lord? Like, was it, let me see. Was there anything you were afraid of losing? Like what people would think, like, pride, like what was holding you back?
A lot of times when I was going through the transition, I was holding back because I didn't want people to think that, oh, he's Mr. Holy Roller, or he's thinking he's good, and he's just that. And a lot of times what held me back was the the arguments with my wife, you know, and I'm like, why? I'm trying to serve them, and I'm just arguing more. So that would hold me back a little. I said, well, maybe if I stop going to church, you know, our marriage would get better, and all these thoughts that were going to my mind. It was so real, it was really real, and I just a lot of times that held me back to come here because I was like, wow, I wasn't going to church and everything's perfect. I go to church and I'm having all these issues. I'm like, can't even. I wake up Sunday and it's 4th of July. We're just going back and forth, and I just said enough. I just literally just had to change my way around things and just kind of find my little corner, and pray at my own time and just ask the Lord to just shield me with His blood, and be able to withstand the enemy and protect myself from him, and able to just come to church with full open arms.
Yeah. Do you remember the day when you finally came to the moment of surrendering to the Lord? Like, you're going through the processes, but do you remember the day when you came to Jesus?
Yeah, everything started changing more when I lost my parents, my dad, my mom, and then the news of my sister. It was just so close to home, and it was within that time frame when I decided to say, no, I'm all yours. I can't do it anymore. I just can't. And if I go, I want to make sure I'm 100 with him. I want to make sure I'm clean. So I just started. I started repenting to just about everybody I know, and just telling them I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember this day. I don't remember how long it was ago, but we were actually meeting to talk about something else. And we just sat down at the table out there and we had to talk about Jesus. And I'd known Noe for a little while, but we were talking because I think that was in the process. We were like, you were wanting to do some more because I think you were still like just trying to get yourself straightened up a little bit,
Yeah.
And he was wanting to do some more, and we were talking about it, but we came to the point of that conversation. I'm like, no, I'm just going to have to ask you, do you have a relationship with Jesus? Like, have you turned from your sins and turned to Jesus? And I remember that day, he's like, I haven't. Like, I grew up around these things, but I have not done that. And we got to sit at that table and come before the Lord together. And now I'm, thankful that you're not just my friend, you're my brother in the Lord. And that's a completely different thing. But when you...
I want to say, I tip my hat to you, brother, because it's going to be bravery and noble for a man to do what he's doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell a sad story. I feel good about it.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, that's why there's value in this. We all got a story. But the most important part of our story, if that moment in your story hasn't happened yet, is I was going this way all the way through, and then Jesus changed everything at some point. And if you don't hit that point, then again, the Bible's super clear. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more at the end. But if your story never changes trajectory, the Bible is very clear that story ends in destruction. Jesus says, I'm the only way to life. And so if you never take that fork in the road that goes to life, then you know where your story is ending. But thankfully, I had the opportunity to sit there with Noe and come to that point where the story that was going this way with all the problems, Jesus changed everything and took it that way. That's what we're talking about today. But in light of even that thought process, when you came to Jesus a little while back, were you perfect in that moment?
Oh, no. No, I was far from perfect. But I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I was striving for. And so, again, a lot of temptation comes all of a sudden when you're trying to change your life, and you just have to overcome it. And a lot of times when these temptations come, you have to just kind of humble yourself and say, Lord, I need your help. I need your help. So I'm just thankful that I was able to not act on these temptations, and start all over again. I was able to pull through and be able to change myself, through him. And, again, it was really hard for me to change how I am right now. Very, very hard, and I don't have the perfect lifestyle, but I'm just really thankful. One time I had everything, and that's where I thought I was on top of the world, and thankfully for God, he was able to humble me to where I'm at now, and I'm really thankful on the things that I have now. And before I was like, I don't need God. I have everything. I have my house, I have my business, I have everything. And look at me now. No business, no house. Right? Now I have an apartment, but I'm okay. I'm okay with that because I'm happy. I can honestly say that I have no really care in the world to worry, I should say, worry in the world, because I know that he's got me.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. So, I know you touched on it already, but, even in your day-to-day life now, how do you view day-to-day life now? How do you view people differently than you viewed them before the Lord?
Before I wouldn't really, I would care, I wouldn't, I would just be all about me. Be all about me and the things that I was in at the time, and I wasn't, people tell me something, I would just lash out at them. Like I said, I would tell them back, or give them gestures, or just tell them bad things. And now I don't do that. I'm just, I can have my enemy right here, and I don't say hi, and if he gives me a very dirty look, and I'll just pray at the time, and I don't do anything. I just pray for those that are against me or talk bad about me, or I look at everybody differently now. I seek that if they're doing that, that means they don't know the Lord, and I'm going to try to plant the seed somehow. How? If I have to talk to them and apologize for whatever I did, and I got them to the point where they don't like me, I'll do that. And so that's what I do. I'll see a couple of guys that didn't like me before because of the Lowrider Club, and now we talk with no problems, and hey, how's it going? And so that's different for me. That's what I'm doing. I'm just now I'm not mad.
Yeah. Yeah, like I see in you, like you have a charisma that I lack at times. So, I hear crazy stories from Noe sometimes. Like the other day, he was telling me the story, like, oh, I thought people were following me into a parking lot, and I pulled into the parking lot, and I felt like the Lord told me to go talk to him, so I went and talked to him. and he was, went and had a conversation with the family, met with them and stuff, and it's like that's cool.
And they came to church.
Yeah, and you've had the opportunity to meet with them and stuff, and God's working through those things. But it's like our mission statement, our whole mission is broadcast Jesus, make disciples, and the disciple making process isn't over till you're dead. It's like until you're with the Lord, the disciple making process grows. So is Noe perfect right now? No. Am I perfect right now? Absolutely not. The goal of what we're doing here, though, is to collectively become more like Jesus and be the hands and feet of him, and do that together to be more effective together. I think you came to know the Lord, and you said some of the difficult things that kind of played into that. But I think even after you came to know the Lord, you were still coming to church here and there, and you were still working on some things. But was there some things that happened in life that kind of took you from I'm just coming to church to like, I'm going to be serious about, following Jesus?
Well, that had a lot to do with, the death in the families and that are real close to my heart, and so that was like more of a turning point where I decided to kind of really do that. Besides the day-to-day fighting with my wife, that I was always doing things and not caring or whatever the case may be. I just I was just done arguing, and so I had to be the one to submit myself and just basically tell her I'm sorry. I'm very prideful, and I had to stop being prideful.
Yeah.
So that's where I basically started changing everything on how I think or how I walk with the Lord, and how I'm starting to do more for Him.
Yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but, I think that, so you were still kind of, you knew the Lord, you were growing, you were still kind of coming on and off, and, different things were happening, but I believe it was your mom, God taking your mom home, that was the moment that really got your attention to even take it seriously to another level. Would you say that's probably?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of regrets. Things I should have done that I hadn't done. And she was a big part of my decision making. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we loved your mom too, and I saw that moment where I think God had saved you, He was transforming you, and in the process of your transformation, that was God's time where He brought your mother home to be with Him. But I think it was that moment, like you said, that I think He really got you moving for Him, and it's actually been kind of encouraging to see that, even though like in the wake of even difficult things happening, like God still uses that to change our lives. And
yeah, my mom was sitting on the couch and she was telling me on the other side of the wall. And last time she was here, we took a picture, me and Sylvia, with her. And that day she told me when I was sitting down, she was eating her little, I don't know what she was eating, but she's always eating here.
she always had some snacks.
She always had some snacks. And she told me in Spanish, mijo, no pares de venir a la iglesia por mí y por ti, don't stop coming to church. Do it for me, but do it for you, and just come to church. And that was my mom's biggest worry, because I was always the black sheep of the family. Oh, at least I thought I was, and so it was really, I took that to the bank, so.
Let me just ask you one last question. Based on, just what you've walked through, like how would you encourage the person that's maybe early on in that process? Maybe they're, still trying to figure out what they think about God and think about church. They don't have a relationship with Jesus yet, or, based on what you've gone through, what would you tell those people?
Just give your life up to Him. Like if you're coming to church, life is too short, especially when we're all heading the same direction. It's better to be ready now than not be ready at all. The bills are gonna be here. They're always on time. Don't worry about the bills. Don't worry about anything. You just know that Jesus will have your back. One way or another, we pay them, whether they're on time or late. And to me, I found that by submitting to Him and by not worrying about the small things, it's has helped me grow with him, and I feel that that's a key part of just stepping forward by just admitting that, okay, you know what, if you have pride, take it away, just let it go, just attend church, submit to him, and know that he's going to take care of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can hang out there if you want. I'm gonna open up the Word for a minute. Let's go to Matthew chapter 7. I'm just gonna stay seated with you guys, and let's see. Oops. Okay. Matthew 7. I'm going to read verse 13 down to the end of the chapter in Matthew 7. And I want you to just pay close attention. I mean, see Jesus' heart in what he's sharing. And even just think about, the story we just heard and consider what Jesus is saying. So Matthew 7, starting in verse 13, it says, "Enter by the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." It says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. It says, you will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them." Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, done many wonders in your name?' He says, and then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.' He says, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a man who has built his house on the rock. The rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And so it was when Jesus ended saying these things that the people were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes." I want you to see a few things here. That first passage, verse 13, where we started, it says, Jesus is saying, he says, "Enter by the narrow gate." I mean, picture this. It's there's this little gate, and then there's this wide open gate. Most people are choosing to go through that wide open gate. The wide open gate is the path that most people already find themselves on. You can just keep walking down that path and just know that there's a cliff at the end of that path. The end of that path leads to destruction. If we want to put this into the spiritual realm terms, like the end of that path is hell, and the narrow gate is the path that leads to the heavenly places and leads to God's presence. Jesus says, "Enter by the narrow gate," but just know that a lot of people are going to walk down that really wide open path. He says, "There are many who go by it." He says, "Narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." When Jesus is talking about the way that leads to life there, remember what Jesus said. What did Jesus say? Jesus says, "I am that way. I am that life. And nobody will ever get to my Father unless they come through me." Now we can look at that, and I think a lot of people look at that and be like, well, isn't that like a really narrow-minded worldview? Like, you say that this is the only way to get to heaven, that this is the only way that's right. Well, what about what all these other people think? It's like, well, I mean, a lot of people think a lot of different things. And even in Bible times, even when Jesus was there, they were trying to share different messages of how to get to the God and how to be right and all of those things. And so people look at this and they say it's really narrow-minded, but you got to think about something. And really the crux of all of this is, what do you think about Jesus? If you've ever read this book and you have considered who he is, Jesus in this entire book makes the statement and makes the claim that Jesus is God come down to walk amongst men, to die on our behalf, to be buried and risen again to save us. Now, if you sit here and you say, oh, I agree that he is God who came down to man, then that God who walks among us said, I am the only way. If he is God, then he is credible. If he is God, then he deserves to be listened to. If he is God and he says, I am the only way, then who are we as people to say that there's all these other ways when God already said there's one way? If he is credible, if he is who he says he is, then he said, I am the only way. But the great thing is, scripturally, and what we understand from Scripture, is that we don't, in our side, we don't work for it. Like, no, when you weren't cleaning yourself up to get to God. Like, you didn't earn him. The beauty of Scripture is, it's like, I got his free gift to give you. I already died for it. He's like, you may be completely unrighteous, but I lived the righteous life that you didn't live. I died the death that you deserve. And if you want it, you can have my righteousness. You can have my life. All you have to do is say, I'm done with my sin and I want what you offer me. You did that. And that's the only reason why you sit here today the way that you are. It's the only reason why I sit here today. Like, I didn't have some purpose. I didn't come from nothing. Like, if you know my story, like, I didn't come from anything. Like, I wasn't supposed to be here. I was like, some heard my story. Like, I was born to a 12-year-old girl out on the streets living in homes by a rapist. Like, I wasn't supposed to be here. Like, there was 2 attempts to kill me before I was even born. And yet I'm still here. I'm still alive, but I didn't come from some good stock. I don't have some family pedigree. Like, I sit here thankful that's like even me who, like God would save me. Like, why? Like, who am I? That goes for any of us. Like, none of us have something to bring to God. God says, I offer all of you the same thing, and I offer equally. And my son did what he did so that you could have that opportunity. But what does it say there? This is this narrow gate. It's one way. It's him. And if you go through him, it says that way leads to life. But if you choose to go that other path, the wide open path that most everyone else walks down, Jesus says, just know that path's going to lead to destruction. And he follows that. He says there's false prophets. He's like, there's going to be people like wolves in sheep's clothing. They're going to tell you all types of other stories. They're going to lead you to all other types of things. But it's wrong if the center point isn't Jesus, only Jesus. He's the only way, and that's the only way you're going to get to heaven. It's just him. Any other story, any other message by his terms is wrong. Not by my opinion, by Jesus' statements. They are wrong. Jesus continues on that, and he says down in verse 21, he says, he's talking about when that day comes, there's going to be a day and there's going to be a point, whether you choose to believe in him or not, everybody has to stand before him.
True.
Whether you want to believe in him or not, it says one day you will stand before him. It says he is God. We're people. When this life comes to an end or he chooses to come back, every single person is going to stand before him. Now he says, and he's already fully aware, because he is God, that when that day comes, people are going to be like, Lord, Lord, like, I used your name, like I associated myself with you. I even did these things and I claimed they were in your name. But Jesus is like, you just claimed my name. You just did some things. Like maybe you have been okay associating yourself with Jesus, or maybe you were just a churchgoer, like you just associated yourself with him, but you never came to him. Well, Jesus is like, there's going to be plenty of people that say, like, Lord, Lord, or I did these things and I did them in your name. But Jesus is like, you didn't actually know me. You didn't actually have relationship with me. That's when the rubber meets the road moment. That's when everything comes to an end. There's no do-overs at that point. When you're standing before him, it's not like, oh, can I choose it different now? That choice is already passed. But that choice is in front of you right now. It's in front of all of us. Jesus continues and he gives us an analogy. We've used this analogy before. It's the man that builds his house on the sand and the man that built his house on the rock. Now we look at this. He says in verse 24, he says, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But then he says, but everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. Notice in both of these stories, one ends well and one doesn't end well. But also notice the truth, both of them heard the same words. Because Jesus says, whoever hears these sayings of mine, and the second one, whoever hears these sayings of mine, they both heard the truth. Both of these scenarios Jesus is giving, like they both heard exactly what I had to say. One of them chose to obey me and plant their house on this rock. The other one heard what I had to say and said, like, nah, I don't like that rock. I'm going to go build my house on the sand. And then notice that they both faced the same problems. Storms came, winds blew, rains fell. All of us are going to face all of those storms. It's like coming to Jesus doesn't mean everything's going to be easy and nothing bad's going to happen. It doesn't mean that. Whether you come to him or not, you're going to face problems in this life. Jesus is just saying, if you choose to put your house on me, if you hear what I have to say and you put your house on me, then know when all those things come at the end of all this, your house is still going to be standing. Your life is still going to be standing. And you will be with me forever. But if you choose not to build your house on me and you go build on the sand, when the erosion's going to happen and the rains are going to come, the wind's going to blow, he's like, just know, and I'm telling you right now, that same rain, those same winds, and all that's going to happen, and your house is going to fall down. I've been in so many situations with people, and they're like, going through all of these problems, It's like, yeah, we all go through problems, and we got to work through them. Like, we got to face them, and we got to deal with them. But a lot of times I come back to it, but it's like, are you obeying him? Like, have you come to him? Have you built your life around him? Or have you built your life around a bunch of nonsense? Because if you do, then Jesus says, if your house is not founded, if your life is not founded on the rock, then expect your house to fall down. Expect it. And it's crazy because all those people sitting there today, it says that there was a group of people around Jesus when he's teaching it. And it says all the people were astonished because they're like, man, this guy is talking from a level of authority that we haven't experienced before. Like, we hear the scribes, we hear the rabbis, we hear all the teachers and all these things. He's like, they're like, this guy is talking with a completely different level of authority that we have not experienced yet, because they were seeing the word of God being spoken to them in real time. Like, we're reading it as it was written. There was a group of people standing around and that were hearing God talk. And God was telling them the truth, is telling them like it is. And so my hope today is I'm trying to convey it like it is, the way that Jesus intended it. I just encourage you guys, I think that there are so many, I'll say the reality of it, I think that, there is a mass, I'd say the majority of the American church today is probably filled with people that are just lightly associated with Jesus. They maybe attend church. They are maybe okay saying his name and admitting to people that they go to church, but they haven't given their lives over to him. And that's a very different thing. There is a moment, like I said, where the Bible says that we have to understand that he died for me, that he was brought back to life, and I'm done with my sin, and I need him to save me, because Scripture says that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That means every single one of us. It then says the wages of sin is death and hell, which is for every single one of us. But it says that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us so that we could have a path back to salvation and to his Father. And that's open to everybody. So I just encourage you guys, I challenge you guys, if you sit here and it's pride holding you back, like, oh, what are people going to think if I decide to come to Jesus? Forget all that. Like, this is a place where people are going to celebrate those that come to Jesus. You're like, well, what did my family think? I've been in this situation. I remember in my college, we used to teach college students and stuff for many years, and we had a young man who was coming, and he decided to give his life to the Lord. But his, and there's differences. Like, I don't know if, everybody here knows all differences. There's differences between Christianity and Catholicism. There's some very distinct differences. He was raised Catholic, but he just kind of attended. But when he decided to come to a Christian church and come to a relationship with Jesus, most of his family disowned him at that point. His parents didn't want anything to do with him. His sister was having a new baby at that point, didn't really want to have a lot to do with him. He's supposed to, all of these things. And yet he still's like, I know what's right, and I need to follow this Jesus who I've come to know. And so there could be dynamics like that holding back. There could be pride holding back, like what everybody's going to think about me. There could be you holding you back and saying like, well, I haven't cleaned myself up enough to come to Jesus. Well, there's a real clear reason why Jesus said, come as you are. Because Jesus isn't about you fixing yourself. As our mission statement says, it's to see lives transformed by his power. What we do here is not to it's not a self-help club. It's not a clean yourself up club. It is to come to know Jesus more intimately, to get closer to him so that he changes every last one of us to better represent him and to be like him. That's right. And so, like I said, I just challenge you guys, if you have at this point not yet come to know Jesus, let's have that conversation. I'm not the one that saves you. He's the one that saves you. Over the coming weeks, we're going to be talking more about what the church looks like. We're going to talk about things like, baptism and communion. Baptism and communion, things like that, those are for people that know and have a relationship with Jesus already. Baptism doesn't save you, but it's like the first act of obedience when you come to Jesus. So we're going to talk about those things. There will be opportunities, if we get to that point and anybody does, need to be baptized or just comes to a relationship with Jesus and wants to be baptized, well, then we're going to get up out of here. We're going to go outside to probably some pretty cold water still, and we're going to baptize people. But I just want you to know that's coming in the coming weeks. But if there's any part of you that has questions, wants to know more, is saying like, I need to have a relationship with Jesus now, but I need to know exactly what that means. If I haven't been clear enough, let's just talk. There's every bit of my time, my wife's time is available to talk about knowing Jesus. 100%. Make an appointment with me. Absolutely. And that appointment could be 24/7. So there is nothing better I can do with my time than to talk about Jesus. And our entire purpose of living and this church here is to hopefully see more people come to know him. And so one day when we get there to his kingdom, we all standing there together around the throne of God. I would hate to see anybody here end up in hell. But we got to be real about it, because he says there's a real wide path headed there. But I got this free ticket for you to take this path to come to me. And I just want you to know that. And I'd say all of this from love. My wife and I, we love you guys, seriously. But we love Jesus. It's all about him. And if we can in any way be part of just, what that looks like for you, we're here. I've had the honor to be in my brother's life as we walk through these things. And I'm thrilled, God's still working on Noe. God's still working on me. We're trying to work on these things together. And I think, the way that God's made this guy with more charisma than me, that, we're going to reach some people. And that's what we've been talking about. So let me pray. And let's go into worship to close this out. But again, if you want to talk, let's talk.